Here are moments in history when an entire people suddenly realize they've been living in a matrix. Not a technological matrix like in the movies, but a psychological one. A belief that they can't do anything for themselves. On September 30th, 2022, 20 million people in Burkina Faso woke up. And when a people awakens, nothing can stop them. For 62 years of independence, they had listened to the whispers that their country was too poor, too small, too weak to feed itself. They had believed it. They had accepted the role of aid recipient, international beggar, forever dependent on the kindness of others. But in one historic moment, all those lies collapsed. A young man stood up and told the world, "We don't need anyone. We are strong enough to feed ourselves." And a miracle happened. Not by magic, but by the awakening of a people who had been underestimated for far too long. To understand why what's happening in Burkina Faso is so revolutionary, we must first understand the machine that has worked for decades to keep Africa in a state of dependency. This isn't a conspiracy planned in a dark room. This is a sophisticated system, built over centuries, that operates like an invisible net covering the entire continent. The first layer of this machine is psychological control. How do you convince an entire people they cannot be self-sufficient? You don't need guns. You just need to repeat the story that they are not capable enough, not smart enough, not resourceful enough to develop on their own. You create statistics, reports, and indexes to prove their weakness. You make them believe their success depends entirely on help from the outside. Indigenous wisdom, traditional knowledge, and local methods are dismissed as backward and ineffective. For Burkina Faso, this system worked very effectively. The nation was once French Upper Volta, a colony designed to supply labor for France's other colonies. After independence in 1960, Burkina Faso remained stuck in the role of a raw material supplier. It exported cotton, gold, and unprocessed agricultural products, but had to import almost everything it consumed daily. The collective psychology of the Burkinabe people had been brainwashed to believe we cannot live without them. From food to medicine, from technology to finance, everything depended on external supply. Government agencies were infected by a donor mindset. Instead of focusing on developing domestic production capabilities, they focused on pleasing international donors to receive more aid. Development plans were designed according to the requirements of the World Bank and the IMF, not the actual needs of the Burkinabe people. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy. Believing in failure created failure. When an entire system is designed on the assumption that they cannot be self-reliant, the natural result is perpetual dependency. But there are moments in history when all these layers of deception are peeled back. When a people sees the truth of its own power. For Burkina Faso, that moment came when the 2022 global food crisis caused the price of imported food to skyrocket. People were starving while sitting on some of the most fertile land in the world. This contradiction was too stark to ignore. And at the center of this awakening stood a man who had long understood that true power doesn't come from the outside. Ibrahim Traoré is not just a leader. He is a philosopher of action, an architect of consciousness, a catalyst for transformation. To understand him, we must understand the philosophy he represents. At 34, he is not only Africa's youngest president, but also the representative of an entirely new generation of African leaders, those who reject the role of aid recipient and assert the role of creator. The core philosophy of Ibrahim Traoré can be summarized in one belief. Every people has within them everything they need to prosper. This isn't an empty slogan, but a practical principle that guides his every policy decision. When the world told Burkina Faso it needed aid to fight hunger, he responded by investing in local agriculture. When international experts said they needed foreign technology to develop, he focused on developing indigenous skills and knowledge. When international financial institutions offered loans with harsh conditions, he chose the path of self-reliance. The practical application of this philosophy is evident in the policy, produce what we consume what we produce. This is not just an economic slogan, but a declaration of independence. It requires a fundamental shift in thinking, from what can we buy to what can we create. The historical foundation for this philosophy can be found in the legacy of Thomas Sankara, the legendary president of Burkina Faso in the 1980s. Sankara once said, "One cannot ride your back unless your back is bent." Ibrahim Traoré has inherited and evolved this ideology, applying the philosophy of African liberation to modern challenges. But what makes Ibrahim Traoré different is his modern adaptation. He doesn't simply copy Sankara's ideas, but transforms them to fit the 21st century context. He understands that self-reliance in the age of globalization doesn't mean isolation, but engaging with the world from a position of strength, not weakness. He combines ancient wisdom with modern techniques, traditional knowledge with advanced technology. The psychology of a revolutionary is always different. Ibrahim Traoré has the ability to recognize patterns that others miss. While other leaders see isolated problems, poverty, unemployment, lack of education, he sees the connection between them all. He understands that poverty isn't just a lack of food, but a lack of the ability to produce food. Unemployment isn't just a lack of jobs, but a lack of opportunities to create value. Lack of education isn't just a lack of schools, but a lack of education relevant to local development needs. He also has systems thinking, understanding that everything is connected. An agricultural policy doesn't just affect farmers, but also national food security, the trade balance, national confidence, and even geopolitical standing. An education decision doesn't just affect students, but also the nation's capacity for innovation, cultural preservation, and future competitiveness. Long-term vision is one of Ibrahim Traoré's most prominent traits. While many politicians think in electoral cycles, he thinks in generations. He understands that building true self-reliance takes time, patience, and sacrifice from the current generation to create a better future for their children. His policies are designed not just to solve immediate problems, but to create a foundation for long-term sustainable development. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, is his courage. The courage to confront powerful interests that have invested heavily in maintaining the status quo. The courage to say no to international aid when it comes with conditions that undermine national sovereignty. The courage to try new paths with no guarantee of success. And most importantly, the courage to believe in his people's ability when the whole world is telling them they can't. Ibrahim Traoré doesn't just have a vision, he has a methodology. His method can be divided into 4 clear phases. The first phase is consciousness raising. He began by changing the story the Burkinabe people tell about themselves. Instead of, "We are poor and weak," the new story is, "We have potential and strength." He connected with cultural pride and historical memory, reminding people of their ancestors' achievements, the richness of their traditions, and the nation's once existing capacity for self-reliance. He created new symbols and a new language of possibility, turning impossible into possible, and dependency into independence. The second phase is institutional transformation. He restructured the government to serve the people, not donors. Ministries were reoriented from coordinating aid to supporting production. The budget was reallocated from prestige projects to productive infrastructure. The decision-making process prioritized long-term sustainability over donor satisfaction. New metrics of success were measured by self-reliance indicators rather than donor satisfaction levels. The third phase is the economic revolution. He focused on production capabilities, not consumption capabilities. Import substitution policies were implemented with realistic timelines. Support was given to local industries and value-added processing. The financial system was designed to serve local production. Trade policies protected emerging industries. The goal was to keep wealth circulating within the country longer, creating multiplier effects. The fourth phase is a cultural renaissance. He revived traditional knowledge systems. He gave official recognition to traditional knowledge systems. He integrated local languages into official communication. Cultural events celebrated self-reliance and innovation. Media policies promoted positive African narratives. He blended ancient wisdom with modern techniques, creating a new identity as producers and innovators. But a philosophy means nothing without action. And Ibrahim Traoré's actions created a movement that spread throughout Burkina Faso society with astonishing speed and scale. A revolution is never just about one person. It's about the moment when one person's consciousness spreads and becomes the consciousness of many. In Burkina Faso, this spread created a phenomenon of psychological contagion. Initially, the people were skeptical. They had heard too many promises from previous leaders. They had experienced too many disappointments to easily trust a new vision. But the first believers, the early adopters, began to emerge. These were the farmers willing to experiment with traditional seeds, the teachers integrating local knowledge into the curriculum, the entrepreneurs seeking local solutions instead of foreign partners. The local market could provide more sustainable profits than relying on unstable foreign partners. This change was most evident in the agricultural sector. Farmers began to experiment with traditional seeds. They discovered that the seeds their ancestors had cultivated for centuries were not only well adapted to the local climate, but also had natural resistance to pests and diseases. The formation of local agricultural cooperatives happened organically. Farmers started sharing knowledge, resources, and equipment. Knowledge-sharing networks emerged organically. Innovation and adaptation at the grassroots level became the norm rather than the exception. In the education sector, teachers incorporated local knowledge into the curriculum. Students developed pride in their local culture and capabilities. New educational priorities focused on practical skills and cultural identity. The brain drain slowed as opportunities appeared locally. In the economic sector, entrepreneurs started looking for local solutions. Investment shifted from foreign partnerships to local capabilities. New business models based on local value creation emerged. An economic nationalism without xenophobia developed. A revolution isn't just about changing hearts and minds. It's also about changing systems and structures. Ibrahim Traoré understood that sustainable change needs institutional backing. He conducted a comprehensive government overhaul. Ministries were restructured from aid coordination to production support. The budget was reallocated from prestige projects to productive infrastructure. New metrics of success were defined. Self-reliance indicators rather than donor satisfaction. The economic policy revolution included import substitution policies with realistic timelines, support for local industries, and value-added processing, financial systems designed to serve local production, and trade policies that protect emerging industries. The cultural policy transformation included the official recognition of traditional knowledge systems, the integration of local languages into official communication, cultural events celebrating self-reliance and innovation, and media policies promoting positive African narratives. A true revolution doesn't respect borders. The ideas of Ibrahim Traoré and the success of Burkina Faso began to resonate across Africa and beyond. Regional inspiration is spreading. Leaders from other African countries are studying the model. Youth movements across Africa are adopting similar philosophies. Regional cooperation is being based on mutual strength rather than mutual weakness. A Pan-African consciousness revival with practical applications is underway. Global attention is also increasing. International development organizations are being forced to reconsider their approaches. Academic institutions are studying the phenomenon. Media coverage is shifting from skeptical to curious to admiring. Global South countries are taking note of this alternative development path. Perhaps most importantly, Ibrahim Traoré has contributed to an intellectual revolution, a new development theory based on endogenous capabilities, a challenge to neo-colonial assumptions about African potential, a demonstration of an alternative modernization path, and a proof of concept for self-reliant development. But a revolution is truly measured by the transformation it creates. Numbers and policies only tell part of the story. The real transformation happens at the level of individual human beings, how they think about themselves, how they relate to the world, how they envision the future. A psychological transformation is taking place at every level of Burkina Faso society, from dependency to agency. Before, people thought, we need someone to help us. Now they think, we can solve this problem ourselves. Evidence can be seen in how farmers no longer wait for foreign aid, but find their own solutions to production problems. In how communities self-organize to build infrastructure instead of waiting for the government or NGOs. In how youth are starting businesses at home instead of dreaming of migrating. From a scarcity to an abundance mindset. Before, people thought, there aren't enough resources to do anything. Now they think, we have everything we need, we just need to organize properly. Evidence is shown in the creativity and resourcefulness of the people in utilizing local resources, the development of recycling and reuse projects, and the growth of handicraft and processing industries from local materials. From individual to collective thinking. Before, it was, I have to look out for myself. Now, it's, we succeed or fail together. Evidence is seen in the spontaneous formation of cooperatives, in the spirit of mutual aid, and in the way people share knowledge and resources. The story of Amadou, a 45-year-old farmer on the outskirts of Ouagadougou, clearly illustrates this transformation. I used to farm just to get by. When the harvest failed, I had to take on debt to buy imported rice. Now I farm to feed the whole community, and even export to Niger. The difference isn't the land or the seeds, but the mindset. I realized I could be a producer, not just a survivor. When Captain Traoré said we could feed ourselves, I initially thought it was just politician talk. But when I saw my neighbors succeeding with traditional farming methods, I decided to try. Now, my farm not only provides food for my family, but is also a stable source of income for my entire extended family. Individual transformation, when it happens at scale, creates societal transformation. Burkina Faso is experiencing fundamental shifts at every level of society. The economic ecosystem has completely changed. Production networks are linking local businesses with each other. Innovation clusters are spontaneously emerging around solution-focused groups. Financial circulation is keeping money local longer and creating multiplier effects. And value creation is focusing on adding value rather than just extracting resources. Social structures are also evolving. Community organizations are becoming stronger and more effective. Intergenerational knowledge transfer sees elders sharing wisdom and youth sharing energy. Gender dynamics are shifting with women taking leadership roles in new economic activities, and youth engagement is increasing as young people see a future at home rather than abroad. A cultural renaissance is happening everywhere. A language revival sees local languages gaining prestige and practical use. Traditional knowledge is being validated and modernized. Artistic expression is flourishing with new songs, stories, and art celebrating self-reliance, and a spiritual renewal is connecting cultural identity with economic success. Institutional evolution has created government responsiveness, with public servants more accountable to citizens, educational relevance with schools, teaching skills needed for local development, healthcare innovation, integrating traditional medicine with modern healthcare, and a legal framework supporting local enterprise and innovation. When individual and societal transformations combine, the result is a national transformation, a fundamental change in the character of the entire country. Economic indicators show dramatic improvements. Food security has transformed from import dependence to export capability. Employment is surging in productive sectors. The trade balance is improving with reduced imports and increased value-added exports. And financial independence is growing with less reliance on foreign aid and loans. Social indicators are also impressive. Education outcomes are focusing on relevant skills and cultural pride. Health metrics are improving with better nutrition and healthcare access. Social cohesion is strengthening with a stronger sense of national unity and purpose. And migration patterns are shifting with youth staying and diaspora members returning. Burkina Faso's international standing has changed dramatically. It's showing regional leadership with other countries studying the Burkina Faso model, gaining global recognition for its successful self-reliant development, improving partnership terms with negotiations from a position of strength rather than weakness, and growing its soft power as its cultural and intellectual influence expands. But perhaps most important are the intangible transformations, the immeasurable changes, national confidence in its collective capability, a future orientation with planning for generations rather than just surviving today, creative energy with innovation and experimentation at every level, and moral authority in standing up for the principles of dignity and self-determination. This transformation isn't just significant for Burkina Faso. A true revolution can never be contained within borders. Ideas have a tendency to spread, especially when those ideas are backed by concrete results. The Burkina Faso revolution is creating ripples across the world in ways that even Ibrahim Traoré couldn't have anticipated. A continental awakening is taking place, with other African leaders questioning dependency models. From Ghana to Kenya, from Senegal to Tanzania, politicians are studying the Burkina Faso model and asking themselves, if they can do it, why can't we? Youth movements across Africa are inspired by the possibility of self-reliance. Africa Rising hashtags on social media are no longer just empty slogans, but are backed by concrete examples. Economic integration is strengthening as African countries trade more, with each cultural pride revival is happening with a renewed appreciation for African knowledge systems and achievements. Global South inspiration is spreading beyond Africa. A development alternative is proving that self-reliant development is possible. South-South cooperation is creating new partnerships based on mutual respect. Knowledge sharing is seeing traditional solutions being recognized globally, and political models are offering alternatives to Western-imposed governance structures. An academic revolution is transforming how development is understood. A new development theory based on endogenous capabilities, research priorities shifting to focus on local knowledge and solutions, educational curricula, including African success stories and studies, and publishing platforms giving African perspectives a global reach. The media transformation has been remarkable. A narrative shift from Africa as a problem to Africa as a solution source. Documentary interest with filmmakers documenting the transformation. A social media revolution with African voices controlling their own stories, and cultural products like music, literature, and art celebrating self-reliance going global. A revolution's true measure is its impact on future generations. Children growing up in Burkina Faso today will have a completely different worldview from their parents. The educational foundation is creating children who learn that they are creators, not just consumers. Skill development programs are giving them practical abilities to solve local problems. A cultural grounding is providing a strong sense of identity and capability. A global perspective is enabling confident engagement with the world as equals. Institutional sustainability is being built through policy frameworks designed to maintain self-reliance, economic structures with built-in protections against redependency, cultural preservation mechanisms to maintain revolutionary values, and a leadership pipeline ensuring a new generation of leaders is committed to this path. Regional integration is accelerating with economic blocs of African countries cooperating as equal partners. Knowledge networks sharing innovations and best practices, cultural exchange, celebrating diversity while building unity, and political coordination, developing common positions in international forums. If the Burkina Faso model spreads successfully, a global transformation could include a complete rethinking of the development paradigm, more equitable global power structures, economic systems based on mutual benefit rather than exploitation, and a cultural renaissance with respect for all civilizations and knowledge systems. Ibrahim Traoré and the Burkina Faso Revolution teach us universal principles applicable everywhere. The power of belief. Transformation begins in the mind. When people believe in their capabilities, those capabilities expand. This is true for individuals, communities, and nations. The importance of self-reliance. True strength comes from developing your own capabilities rather than depending on others. This doesn't mean isolation, but engagement from a position of strength. The value of a cultural foundation. Innovation builds best on a cultural foundation. Rather than abandoning traditions, successful societies integrate traditional wisdom with modern techniques. The necessity of courage. Change requires courage. The courage to challenge existing systems. The courage to try new approaches. The courage to believe in possibilities others dismiss. What false limitations has your country accepted? What resources are being exported raw that could be processed locally? How can citizens take more responsibility for national development? Ibrahim Traoré has shown us that a revolution doesn't need violence, only a clear vision of what's possible, a commitment to practical action, a belief in people's capabilities, a willingness to challenge assumptions, and persistence in the face of skepticism. Burkina Faso has proved that transformation is possible. The question is, who will be next? Which community, which country, which individual will embrace this revolutionary mindset and create their own transformation? The revolution is waiting. The question is, are you ready to join it? The story of Ibrahim Traoré and Burkina Faso is not just about one man or one country. It is about a fundamental shift in human consciousness, a shift from believing in limitations to believing in possibilities, from accepting dependency to demanding dignity, from consuming others' creations to creating your own solutions. This is a game changer not just for Africa, but for all of human civilization. When a people realizes its true strength, they don't just transform themselves. They transform the world's understanding of what is possible. And that is the true legacy of Ibrahim Traoré. Not just liberating Burkina Faso, but liberating human potential itself.